Hey, everybody, and welcome for another segment of Keeping It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra, and today I have the pleasure of bringing back on my dear friend, Nancy DeLuca Stempel. She is the executive director of the Learning Community International. Now, what is that? We talked about this on our last segment, and I do suggest you go back and look at that video. It's about, the Learning Community International is a private school homeschool fusion. So Nancy, can you explain that a little bit so the viewers can just get a basic synopsis of what it is your program does for homeschooling as a private school?
So there's two things that the learning community is. First of all, thank you again for having me on, Sandy. It's always a pleasure. The learning community is two things. We live in Maryland, so homeschoolers have two options in the state of Maryland: to be supervised either by the county if they homeschool, or to be supervised by approved non-public entity, which is the learning community. So we supervise home education in the state of Maryland. In addition, we are a Maryland K-12 private school, and we're accredited by Middle States. So those are the both hats that we wear. And people have an option to enroll in our services for either one of those.
Okay. So, we talked a little bit about the fact that this is a customized individual curriculum for the individual learning student. Is that correct?
Right. So if you're homeschooling in the state of Maryland, the homeschool regulation is regular, thorough instruction in the courses that are typically taught in public school. That's basically, each state has their own regulation or law, and that's what Maryland is. So that gives you a lot of freedom. It doesn't talk about what the content of those courses are, but those are the courses. Your four cores: math, science, social studies, English language arts, and then electives. And there's a lot of freedom to study other things as well. And then in the learning community, most schools will say, here's our curriculum, this is what you have to do, and we'll validate that, and then we'll give you a diploma. We'll graduate you from that. But the learning community, our specialty is customizing learning for K-12, still using those kind of core courses, but how you approach those, what the content is, the learning styles, where you're going to study. You're going to be at a desk with a book, or you're going to be out in the field. And then there's courses that, say if you're going to study English language arts, but you don't have to use the same books that they're studying the English language arts in that are in a public school setting. You can use whatever books you want to. So our advisors work with every family and their students, their kids, to design that program. What the course title is, what's the course description, is it going to be project-based learning, hands-on, whatever that learning approach is best for the student and where they really get intrinsically motivated. Our advisors will collaborate with the family to design those courses. So it's really customized. And I think I mentioned this before. We've been around for over 35 years, graduating thousands of kids, and no two high school transcripts have ever been the same, because it's really individualized.
Yeah, and the whole time you're talking there, I'm seeing a classroom full of first graders, sixth graders, seventh graders, whatever, sitting there just conforming. Everyone's looking at the same book. Everyone's being taught in this exact same way. And then everybody's being graded in the exact same way, but no one's taking in consideration that someone's learning style might be very different.
They've tried to approach that over the years, the last couple decades. They've kind of I think it's kind of lip service to that, because they're starting to identify people learn differently. But it really is apples and oranges when you've got a classroom of, 25, 30, 35 kids. It's very difficult to implement that. So we like to say TLCI is a private school for one, because it's just really all about how they learn best.
Yeah, which then fast forwards me to, my own experiences with my youngest, who was born in 92. So she was born in that indigo crystal realm, right? And as soon as these kids started influxing the earth after the harmonic conversion in 87, medications were were just available for them. And excuse me, I was thinking about how she learned differently, but yet we were being taught, oh no, there's a problem here and we need them to conform. And so they're not learning the way everyone else is learning. And it would be, say, 30 kids in a classroom, and there might only be one or two that had this particular issue, right? So then the child began to learn, I'm not as smart as everybody else. I have to be medicated. And this took my youngest on a whole trajectory that I think could have been avoided. First of all, if I was a little more aware at the time of the learning community, right? Homeschooling, or even how to fuse that with public school system, because I didn't know that you could fuse both. I thought it was either or, right? And I didn't even know much about that then. So these kids were squelched. So much of their brain functions, their heart, their self-esteem was squelched because they were conformed to learn under being medicated. And so now what we have is more people wanting to research the homeschooling, right? Or how to take them out of a public school, maybe put them over in a private school, maybe a smaller setting is going to be better for them. But now we're going to have, or we are already having, this influx of newly energized children that are coming in with safe space to learn even more differently, if that's even a way to say it. And I have a whole synopsis on that too, because I feel like these kids that are coming in now, it's because of people like you and I who have paved the way for them to have the privilege of learning differently, which should really be the norm, right? It should be the norm. So how could the learning community help with all of these new learning styles of energetics that are coming into the planet now?
Yeah. One thing just to go back for a second before I answer that, the kids coming in, like I said, like it's kind of apples and oranges, how they're trying to educate. For some people, that traditional setting works. It works for them. They're highly verbal linguistic. They come in, that's kind of the approach. You're going to read material. You're going to answer questions on a test. You're going to answer, the kids that raise their hand, the other kids never raise their hand. And the other kid, there's always those kids that are, so for some people that model works. And when you are trying to fit the other groups into that same model is where you run into the problems. And the medication was a big thing. But you first had to get tested, and then they'll say what we might think is a gift of the way our child is, they see it as an impediment to learning. Yes. So now they're going to give them some kind of accommodations. They might modify the curriculum, or they might suggest medication. And I remember back when that happened in the 90s, who was really diagnosing your child was the teacher. The teacher was the one that's saying, I think that it wasn't a medical, it was the teacher. And then unfortunately, if the parent went, no, I don't want to medicate my child, then there would be kind of some tension between the teacher, if that child was disruptive, and then there'd be a tension between the parent and the teacher and the child, and then the whole thing just started falling apart for the child. So we get a lot of students that are coming out of those settings.
whether it's in elementary, middle, or high school, that they've gone through that. And unfortunately, there are many times those children have lost their love of learning now, because as you mentioned, there were different ways that were emerging. The way that they felt natural to learn wasn't working in that system, and they got kind of oppressed. And then that light of learning, that lifelong learning mentality, which all of us are, we're all lifelong learners. That's what humans are. It gets squelched. So what we want to do in the learning community is help reignite that. So when we have these children coming out of those school settings, and parents are just like, what happened to my child? This beautiful child, you know, before I sent them to school, they just loved to learn, and they were free spirits, and they explored everything, and, you know, they sang, and all of a sudden they felt like my child was gone. So we have a process that helps the parent and the student start fleshing out what their dream kind of learning model would look like. And from that, we start to collaborate. Our advisors will collaborate with the parents to create a learning plan that's best matched with the way that child learns best. And sometimes it takes a little while for them to come back. It could be the first 9 weeks, the first, 18 weeks, or maybe even the first year before they come back to themselves, and then they hit a good way of learning, and they get it back. It takes a little while. So we work with them closely all year long, having the student reflect how this is working, the plan that we put together, how they think it's working, and we can pivot and change the plan based on how it's actually aligned with how the learner is learning,
Well, I love everything you're saying, because they're taken off course, and I like the fact that they can take the time and get back in their strides, because
Yes.
we're squelching these kids, not just with medication, but you're not like this part of the group, you're over here. So there was a lot of dividing going on through the 90s and early 2000s, when it was medication after trying this and attempts for that. And I know even with my youngest, I put her in private school thinking that was going to be better, smaller environment. It was a little Catholic school. And it was actually the worst thing I could have done. It was the worst thing I could have done, because even in a smaller group, she was still standing out. But then there was many. I watched 1 or 2 students turn to 10 students, turn to 15 students, till 2/3 of the class was learning differently and IEPs and pulled out and medicated. So all 3 things were taken in the context. And so it made, as a parent, my life a living hell. And I wish I had known you at the time, so that I could maybe have had a complement to the schooling system that I was using, whether it was public, private, or homeschooling, that I had this umbrella to assist me. And now we're going to have so many more kids coming into the planet that are going to be learning so differently. And, we're always the student. It doesn't matter how old we are. But, I myself can look back at the times I struggled through the 60s and the 70s in school. I always felt like I didn't learn the way everybody else did, but I had to conform because there was no options then.
Yeah.
So learning for me, when I finally decided to go back to school in my 30s, I had horrible anxiety attacks about not being good enough, not wanting to show my grade when I took a test. It was horrible. And it was that school, in massage school, that they learned I had a learning difference that wasn't like some of the other kids. So all they did was pull me out, and I tutored. And I was getting it like this. And I realized at 35 years old that I'm not stupid, I'm not dumb when I hold a pencil with my thumb. And I thought, wow, and then when I watch my youngest struggle, and I'm trying to do everything I can on my end to assist with that, so she doesn't have to have those feelings of being less than, or not having, enough of the major math social studies, English lit, and so on, that I still struggle with to this day, you know? But
Yeah.
so what we're saying is that even if you're in whatever school system you're in, the Learning Community International can assist.
Yeah, if you're in a public or private school, and we've had that where families have been dual enrolled with us. So they're in a public or private school setting. Really depends on what your needs are. If it's really not working, they're pulling their kids out. But if it's kind of working, but your child has other interests that are really passions and they're pursuing them, but nowhere are they getting acknowledged on an official document because they don't have those classes at school. So maybe it's a musical instrument, maybe it is, art, maybe it's language, it could be interior design, it could be anything. If you're dual enrolled in the learning community, your child could still pursue those and work with us and be officially enrolled, and we're able to give them credit for that learning. So when they have, and there's a lot to say that someone is giving you, valuing what you're doing. So these kids are doing all this, and they want it to be documented and valued, especially at the high school level. So when they go to apply to a university, you say, all right, here's my traditional transcript from local public school, but I've also done all of these other pursuits, learning pursuits with a private school. And those that may really be what makes the difference in getting accepted at a certain university or getting a certain scholarship, or just bringing about an awareness of what that learner might want to pursue in the future. They've been able to really dive in and get and have conversation about it and be valued for it and explore it, that it might pave the way to what they're going to do. Maybe not that standard curriculum, but maybe that exploration is going to pave the way for what they're going to do with their lives,
Yes, and I off camera, I loved the conversation we were having a couple days ago about, let's just say your child is like interested in, say, interior design, right? And you can talk with your advisor and design something where you could start with your own bedroom. How can you redesign your own bedroom? And then maybe you're taking trips to the fabric store, or you're going to a local home design store and you're buying a photo or a different bedspread, or you're rearranging the room so it makes more function, and you can get credit for that.
And the whole course will talk about what's your budget. So you're going to have all these that's a whole course description and what tasks and what are you going to actually do. You're going to create a budget. You're going to choose the fabric. Maybe you're going to go and interview another interior design person. You're going to ask them questions about what's the best way to do this. Then you might measure the whole room. You might create a blueprint. So you're developing all these skills, and that's the course. Then at the end, take photos. You might do a blog. You might do a presentation, a video presentation for your advisor. You might even get an interior designer to weigh in on how well you did and maybe give you tips. So it really becomes these are real learning skills and talents that you're developing and engaging in all of this. Talk about confidence that comes from that and where that may lead. Now, it might not lead anywhere else. That may be one thing you did, and now you're going to move on to something else. But you've been validated, and also in the learning community, you can either get a grade. So we'll create a rubric on how you want to measure learning. And some students go, no, I really don't want a grade. This is what I'm doing. I just want to pass. And we do that too. We just do P's. So it really is, what really meets your needs, if you want grades or you don't want grades.
Well, I was thinking about all the kids that go off to college. They have no clue what they're going into. They take generalized courses the first year, maybe figure out what they want to do the second, maybe the third. And so many of them graduate with bachelor's degrees of things that they'll not really not really in a something they could be passionate about, right? So I
Right.
was also thinking about when we were talking about like a music class. Let's say you have your favorite musician, and you can do a music class based on your favorite musician. You can
Music, yeah, you can use all the
talk about that.
songs that they wrote. Yeah, like use all the songs that they wrote. We had a student that did that. She wanted to learn how to play guitar, but she wanted to use all the Beatle music. So she was learning all the Beatle music, but using that to do different chords. And she started writing her own music. She actually had a traveling who came to her house, a traveling musician, a tutor, traveling tutor. So she didn't go somewhere else. The woman came to her home, had her guitar, had her books, and she designed the, what this course is going to look like and what are you going to know, do, and value at the end of this course. And she collaborated with the teacher. That became the course that we accepted for the learning community. And then she was great. And the interesting thing that happened with that, not only not only
we're in a living curriculum right now.
Exactly. I should have shut that down. Not only did she do that, she also studied British English. She got books on British English because there were certain references in those Beatles songs that you didn't understand unless you understood British culture. She also read a lot of Rudyard Kipling and old poets and stuff like that from England. She also studied all the accents from different parts of England. If you were from London, if you were from, if it was Cockney, all the accents, she was able to identify where in London. Then that's how it started. Then she ended up going to, she got a scholarship where she ended up studying in England at Cambridge University for one summer. And so all of this kind of started out with the Beatles. And then it just kind of, she was able to explore. And going back to what you were talking about, the way students learn, when they come into the learning community, we have this, like I mentioned, this learner startup. We really want to know, how do you learn best? Even if you don't know, let's just throw it out there. How do you learn best? And we encourage them to take risks and explore and fan their curiosity. Even if we say, let's just do this for 9 weeks, 1 quarter. Let's see where it may lead. So even though it's an exploration, they're still getting credit for it. They're still, they can get a grade if they want. They might do 3 or 4 different explorations that we come up with a course title, and they get a full credit because they've done this exploration, which again kind of wets their whistle and goes, oh, I can do more of this. Let me try something else. And we really strive to help them get a greater personal awareness. So then we go to the next level and the next level and see where that may lead. Now, some students might say, no, thank you. I know exactly what I want to study. This is the curriculum I want to use. Now, we may give them some other ideas, but sometimes that's exactly what they want to do. Now, I had a situation like that with a 9th grader, and the mother was like, no, we want her to learn like this, and we want her to explore and try different things. And the daughter was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I said to the mother, what you've done is you've created a facility for her to figure out what works best for her. If she chooses this more traditional way, you have to honor that. You have to facilitate. This is not about your learning. This is not about your identity. This is about hers. And so the mother was like, well, wait a minute, So it took her a little while. It's just the other side of the coin. If the child wants to learn more, structured or more conservatively, we give her the options, but we have to honor that that's the way she wants to learn best.
Yeah. And, if somebody was like, let's just say they're in the middle of a science project and it has to do with plants and things like that, you could literally go to a nursery and possibly do an internship with the nursery that could apply towards that credit too. Could you not?
Absolutely. we've had many situations like that from, you know, whether it was botany, whether it was herbology. We had small engines where somebody was mentoring with a man who had a little small engine business, and he was able to go in there and work on all the engines. And so what we do is the advisor says, all right, let's create a course. Let's have some intention here. And then we start structuring it, how it's going to, you know, work. So they can have this course. Now, halfway through it, all of a sudden something might happen. Now, remember, we're doing all the reflections, what's working and what's not working. So we created this whole course, and now they've had this moment of awareness and said, oh my gosh, I just read a book on planes, and I see that there's the combustible engine and jet engines. I read this book, and I think I'd like to turn a little bit and focus a little bit more here. Let's do this with the small engines, but let me go this way with the jets. Then we go, all right, let's close this, or let's see how we can make a hybrid here, or we can close it and we can start moving toward this. Again, it's a whole collaboration on what direction it's going to take. It's all about facilitating that learner and what's going to lead them to the next aha moment in their learning, you know. So we like to call it a living curriculum. It's not like, all right, this is what we designed, you have to go through. We really keep our finger on the pulse of that intrinsic motivation of the student.
Yeah, but you know, it also, what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling right now is that everything's not so mental, that there's heart-centered based encouragement. So you can find your passions and more about knowing yourself. And as a kid, we don't get taught those things. We spend decades as an adult trying to figure out who we are and what works best for us. But if we can teach these kids that they have some say-so in how they learn, and how they learn
right,
best.
And we're honoring the emerging person. So, and what started out the way you were learning in elementary school may be different in middle school age, or maybe at the high school age, may be different. So we're honoring that emerging person and validating what they're saying to us, so they understand, okay, my ideas have meaning and have purpose, and we're mentoring and companioning them in that journey. And that really brings me to also finding the right advisors. I do a lot of, you know, interviewing people to find the right advisors. Sometimes we have teachers that find me and they want to be advisors, and sometimes it's hard for them to break out of that model, that school model, and they default to that. Even parents tend to default, even though they might say, it's not working in school, and I have these different ideas. When push comes to shove, parents get nervous and they might default to those old models. That's why we need those advisors that go, okay, mom, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about where you're going with that. So we're not only mentoring the children's learning, we're helping the parents understand these possibilities, because people get fearful. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? You know, this is not the typical way. Parents start to panic, you know, is this going to be okay? And because we've been doing it for so long, we have a track record, and we can share those experiences with people. That helps them calm down too, you know, and go, okay, it's going to be okay.
Well, I'm hearing the road traveled and street smarts the whole time you're talking, because, you know, at the end of the day, that's what gets you really moving in your life. It's not always what's happening in the intellect, that it's the street smarts and the road traveled. Because so many of us, at least I will speak for myself, as a healer, I learned kinesthetically. And I did not know that until I was in my mid-30s going to massage school. I did not know that I learned through touch and how it incorporated. So I learned, oh, okay, well, that works along with my empathicness and my intuitiveness. And so this is kind of the way that I absorb information better than, say, opening up a book or someone telling me how something should be, right? And so there's a lot of these crystal indigos and these rainbow kids and all these. And by the way, none of them like labels. So everyone keeps wanting to label everybody something. I'm just saying it sort of so I can share the type of children that I'm talking about who are also adults now too. They're learning differently in these ways. And they want to be able to have a say so in how it is that they're being able to filter the information. But
Yeah,
I know.
go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say that's a good point about the labels. The only reason I think the labels that are out there that sometimes I'll ask people is because they sometimes come with certain symptoms. There's certain characteristics that are underneath that label. And by understanding that helps us know more how you learn best and how we can customize the courses. So the labels, and even the labels they use in school, like if they say it's, if you have a learning challenge and, whether it's comprehension or whether it's, a speech and language, and they say these different things, they're usually doing that because they want to be able to provide support around those things. So when people come to us and, if you don't have any kind of, you can't explain to us what it is that you learn, how you learn best, it's hard for us to customize things. So it's not to just label you to say that, but I understand people are very sensitive about that. Even the testing, they don't want to get any testing. And again, it's for that reason. Once you have that label and it's down on an official document, it follows you for the rest of your life. But sometimes with the learning styles, as you say, those can be boxes too. You say, oh, I'm a kinesthetic learner, or I'm verbal linguistic, or I'm visual spatial, and you've just painted yourself into a box. And there's a great book by Howard Gardner, and it's multiple intelligences. And he says, it's not how intelligent you are, it's how you are intelligent. And so those are a lot of those. There's some ways that you learn best, but a lot of times they're crossing over. They're not all living in a bubble by itself. Oh, I'm just kinesthetic, but usually that's one of my and then if you read his book, you'll see there's symptoms of that. Like I know for me, if I can't see the speaker mouth moving, I can't hear them. So I was that person that was always tall in school. And so I was in the back of the room and I was always doing this so I could see the speaker's mouth. And so I used to think something was wrong with me, like you said, when you're in school. Then I read that it was a characteristic of a kinesthetic learner. That was one of the characteristics. And so now if I go to a lecture, I'm in the front of the room so I can see the person. And I also take notes all the time, which is also characteristic. Do I always use those notes? Not usually, but it's a way for me to stay focused. I'm watching the person, I'm staying connected to everything. And so that kind of awareness of how we learn best or how we are intelligent, understanding what's underneath those so-called labels can really empower you.
Well, I'm so glad you just said that, because the whole time you're talking, it's like when I realized I was kinesthetic, and I didn't even know what kinesthetic was at the time, and that was in the mid-90s. Then I learned, okay, depending on what situation I'm in, is kinesthetic primary or is visual primary? Is auditory primary? Is reading, is feeling the energy primary? So and it's helped me understand more about me, which was what I think makes what I do as a living, as a healer, etc., the things that I do in my repertoire so much better, because I pull on all these different ways that I learn. But a grade is a label. And I know growing up, boy, you didn't get that A like your big sister did or someone else did, and you just got a B. Well, you were lazy. You weren't You know, nobody ever saw you really struggle. They just looked at the end result at a grade, right? So I feel like we are evolving more and more into trying to customize and bring living, loving awareness to different styles of being able to understand information. And the Learning Community International, and it's international, everybody. It's not just state. It's not just Maryland. This is international. It doesn't matter where you live, what country you're in. This community has something for you. So now let's talk about real quick, because you know we're gonna have to do another one of these, because there's going to be a lot more coming up, because we're really touching base on not just what can help the children that are already here, but the children that are coming, but the parents of all of these children of different ages, including myself. Even though my kids are grown and out and about, I'm learning so much more about the opportunities that the Learning Community International provide for everybody. But let's talk about let's just say someone is homeschooling, and at the end of their homeschool duration, it's time to graduate and figure out. So what happens there? They're done, but they're not given a diploma. So then what happens?
Right. So the state of Maryland, it is your option is to get a GED if you want that official document. Now, there are many people who've homeschooled. They've never gotten a GED. They've applied to colleges. They've gotten in, and they get their college degrees. It is really amazing how important a high school diploma is. We still have people who have college degrees calling us up, because as a private school, we have to keep all the records, right? So they call us and say, you know, they're 30 years old and they're getting a job, and the business is asking for their high school transcript, or they want a letter, an official letter that they graduated from high school. So if you say, I was homeschooled, there's no way to really validate that. There's no way to hence we tell people, if you're homeschooling and you're not with, you know, you're not getting a GED, you're not with a place like the Learning Community, you should have a portfolio, keep copious notes, because even some colleges, if you go into a college and you don't have a diploma and you say you were homeschooled, they also want to see all the courses you took. They want to see all your records that your parents were supposed to keep. They want to see sometimes the the USBN numbers on the books you used. They really dive deep, because back in the late 70s and early 80s, before it was, you know, legal, let's say in the mid 80s, you went to a college and you told them you homeschooled, that you were an oddity, and it was, you know, maybe you took an SAT and they let you in. But now, because it's mainstream now, they have to have some way of validating that you actually homeschooled. So they're going to make you jump through all these hoops. So we always tell people to really keep copious records and book list and do all of that, so you can validate it if you ever need to. But but most people will go and get the GED. The GED still has a stigma. Not the military only accepts so many people that come in with GEDs. Universities, it still has a stigma that you didn't complete high school. And even if you say you're homeschooled, they have boxes they're ticking off. So even if you have a narrative of what happened, there's no box for them to tick it off, you know?
Yeah.
So we have had people come to us that, you know, weren't homeschooled, dropped out of high school in their senior year. Now they want to get a promotion. They need to take a test. They're electricians, say, for instance, or they're in that field, and they can't take the test because they need a high school diploma for them to take that test to get the promotion. So we've had people find us, and we were able to give, you know, life experience credit through writing papers and, you know, doing different things so we can validate it, and then actually awarding a high school diploma. And so Manfred Smith, the founder and principal director of the learning community, his real focus is helping people, getting out of people's way. Don't throw blocks in people's way, getting out of their way, getting things out of their way and helping them create their best life. And so, we evaluate who those people are, but we're able to do that. It's one of our services that we can provide for people. And it makes, I think the oldest person we had graduate was, I think, in their 60s. And then the youngest we had was 12, who actually went to college at 12. I think they graduated medical school. I forget how old they were. They were very young. And so, again, it's getting out of people's ways and giving them what they need and helping them move forward to create their best version of themselves and the life worth living,
Yeah, my heart is just so, like, I don't know, it feels light and fluttery right now, knowing that there's all these options and opportunities for people, and that it's not over just because something occurred where you had to step away from high school. Because you're right, there is no box that says there was a death in the family and I had to step up and work. There was an illness. We moved and such happened, or it can't just be assumed that I freaking gave up and just stepped away from school. It could be so many different reasons, but there's not a box there that says, okay, if I check this box, then I might get approved. It's all looked at as a GED regardless, and whatever conclusion someone wants to draw is up to them. High school diploma is completely different. So what we're saying here too is that when you graduate, whether it's through a private school, a public school, or homeschooling, you can get a high school diploma through the Learning Community International.
Yeah, and there's different, it's not like we're, I don't want to give the impression like we're a diploma mill and we're just handing out.
I trust me, I'm not getting that impression. And anyone who's got any smarts out there is going to know that.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say too, that
you have to earn it.
Those are different possibilities, but our main focus is students coming in, and we really want to help them have a personal awareness so they can grow and learn, so they can create a life, whether it's college, entrepreneurship, it can be, it can be very unique, or I should say not very unique, that's redundant, but it could be a unique kind of approach. Maybe you're not going to go to college right away. Maybe you're going to do a postgraduate. We even have a postgraduate where students are going to travel and explore and do different things after high school. So it's really about empowering the students. And the way we define empowerment, I think I told you this before, is really helping people develop the skills and the awareness to make best choices for their lives. That's empowerment. It's not by just saying, oh, you have this choice, this choice, this choice. No, it's about helping them develop the skills. And one of the things we talked about before is what's embedded in our program between the advisors, the learners, and their parents is something that was created by Dr. Skip Downing, the On-Course program. And those look at, I think it's 11 different, or maybe 8 different skills. He calls them success skills, whether you're success in your career, in your life, or in college. And that's learning how to be interdependent. Sometimes you think of people being independent, but there's a huge benefit to being interdependent. So you can figure out how do I need to network to find out what I need to know to move me to the next level. So employing interdependence is a big thing. Another thing is that gaining self-awareness. So that advisor is going to ask you certain reflective questions, diving a little deeper, not just yes or no questions, helping you move to the next level of awareness. I have them listed here, so I'm looking over here. Also, personal responsibility. And starting out with the elementary school age, helping parents, giving those students more personal responsibility at the middle school age and at the high school age. A lot of them are doing a lot of the interaction with their advisor, and not as much as the parent guiding it, but they're allowing that growth of personal responsibility and speaking for themselves, not just being a passive learner, you know. And then there's also that emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is huge. It's really under looked at. And so we have that. Also talking about self-motivation and self-management, that intrinsic motivation. There's all those, through those reflective journals, a lot of conversation. Either the student is writing about it. We have on our learning management system, they can leave audio reflections, or they can do videos. So we have the different, modalities of how they feel best. And sometimes they feel best one way, next time they feel best another way. So we have that. And then it's the lifelong learning, really fanning that curiosity, that exploration, taking little risks, getting out of your comfort zone. All of that is what we train the advisor, is based on Skip Downing's on Skip Downing's book. And Skip Downing is on our advisory board, so he gives us a lot of advice in that. So I'm looking for also advisors that feel aligned with facilitating and mentoring students and parents in those success skills also.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Nancy, this has been a real pleasure and a real eye-opener. And I'm sure all the viewers are going to really enjoy listening to this, and there's so much more. And I know that they will have access to contacting you because your information will be in the description, and they can email you and have a phone call with you to see if this is a good fit for their children. And
they can contact me and request. We do a 30-minute complimentary discovery conference, and they can share with me who their kids are, and I could share with them and see if it's a good match.
Yeah, in the meantime, they can also go to the website too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is?
It's tlcischool.org. Yes. www.tlci, which is the Learning Community International School, all spelled out.org.
Yeah. And so they can educate themselves a little bit there, and then email you and set up I think there's probably a link on the website that gives them where they can fill it out as well.
Yeah, there's a form they can fill out. It comes right to me, and then I'll respond, and we can set up a date to do a video conference like this and see how we might be able to assist them.
Yeah, and when Nancy and I get together, I have to tell you guys, she lives and breathes this. This is her world. This is in her DNA. And she talks sometimes so proudly about, oh, I was just talking to a family in India. Oh, I was just talking to a family in Brazil. I was just talking, I have a child that's doing this, or a student that's about to go off to college that wants more of this. And we talk about this stuff when we get together, and it's so much fun to first off, see and feel her exhilaration and her proud. She's mama bear proud. I'm going to say that. And then also just to know that everyone's getting touched by her and by the Learning Community Inc. around the freaking world. I mean, this isn't just a brick and mortar location sitting here in Maryland. This is accessible to everyone. And so if you've got questions, concerns, comments, I want you to leave them in the comments. I want you to like and subscribe. If you would, please share this video with friends, family, grandparents. If you find an interest in this, copy and paste, send this video to your children or to other people around that you think might be helpful in your community and beyond. So we're here to bring this information to you. And Nancy, did you have anything else you wanted to close out with?
Just saying that about when you said live and breathe it, and I mean, my friends are always very kind because it is, like I told you, I homeschooled my kids K through 12, and pretty much everything else pales in comparison to the satisfaction of doing that. And I continue to do this because it's really, I really believe it's what I'm supposed to do, and I'll do this until I leave the planet. But I can't do it alone. So I'm always asking other people who are interested and wanting to assist me in expanding this in every town and village. And we can have a collaboration. So feel free to contact me, even if you don't have kids, but you would like to join me in this expansion.
Yeah. What a community to belong to. All
Well,
right.
thank
Well,
you so much for the interview. Thank you so much for your
thank
support.
you. We're going to keep doing this because I think more and more people need to be aware of it. So we're just going to say goodbye to everybody. And Nancy, you stay put. Say goodbye. And everybody like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining us today. Nancy, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.